Please note this podcast is not a substitute from seeking help from a licensed mental health professional. If it feels like no one understands your problems or cares to listen, if it feels like there is no one else in this world who has gone through what you have, if you feel like you're so close to giving up on your goals, your business, your ideal life, but still holding on, Cafe with Monica was made for you. I'll show you how to deal with the everyday and not so everyday situations that surface in the lives of millennials. By sharing my experiences and knowledge, I hope to inform, inspire, and provide solutions to problems that may seem out of reach. So grab your coffee or drink of choice and let's just talk about it. All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in back to the podcast. Today's guest is Olivia Gonzalez. I am so excited to share with you just how awesome Olivia is. Olivia has over 20 years of corporate industry experience and has spent 10 years writing corporate brand communication and messages for huge global brands, which include helping them craft brand guidelines, build their brand voice, and develop consistent brand messaging, both internal and external. Olivia now uses her super ninja skills to help entrepreneurs unleash their purpose-driven brands through her brand consulting agency, OMG Brand Story. In today's episode, Olivia will walk through lessons she has learned on her road into entrepreneurship. And also, fun fact, Olivia is an Enneagram 8, and she will share with us why this is an important part of her journey. Olivia, thank you so much for being on this podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. I am super excited to be talking all things Enneagram and the journey that associates with being an entrepreneur, because it's a huge connection, I think.
Yeah. And I feel like every Enneagram 8 I know is so, I guess the one word I would say is passionate, like a very aggressively passionate. And I love it. So I'm so glad we connected. I've just basically have admired you from afar, and I'm just so excited to share your journey and story. So kind of tell our listeners, where did it all start for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've always been a natural storyteller. I've always had a passion for storytelling and writing and being creative ever since I was little, and always felt like a little piece of magic, right, in me. And as I got older, I got into different things, very multi-passionate creative, and got into management, actually leadership at the front end of my career in operations and training. And which was great because, as an Enneagram 8, we are a leader challenger, right? And so my natural tendency was to move in that direction, operations and training, and started working, leading teams everywhere from, as small as, 30 teams all the way up to 200. And so as I did that, I got into the fact that we kept, receiving these communications and things that were coming in from brand communications. And I would see things and I'm like, I'm a natural writer. I can do these things. I can put these together. My goodness, my degree is in communications, for Pete's sake, right? So started to lean in that area, got into brand communications on the global side of things at the entry point there, and really took off from that point. Started working with large organizations, doing their brand messaging, strategic communications planning, and things of that nature. The more and more I did that, the more I kind of felt like I was really good at it. I am really good at it, but it was kind of like they put a ceiling on me. And I started to kind of feel like the goose that laid the golden egg, Jack and the Beanstalk, cranking out the golden eggs for the giants. And I kind of felt stuck in my cage. I felt like, man, I could be doing so much more. I am purposed with so much more. And I know that there was a huge disconnect between what was happening in corporate organizations for brand communications and entrepreneurs who don't have access to that insight, to the strategic framework that comes with, hey, you have to know these things, right, for branding when it comes to a huge organization. So I thought to myself, man, I need to be taking this stuff to the entrepreneurs. And for, why am I not using this information for myself? And so shattered the cage, right, and took my superpowers out into the entrepreneurial world and started initially freelancing. And when I started doing freelance work, got a lot of traction, and we can talk a little bit later kind of when we get into that big shift, but there was a moment in my journey where I realized I could not do it on my own. And I needed to be more receptive to bringing in people into my world so that I could help, because this whole time it just been me. doing, just leading, driving, pushing
Yeah.
forward, doing all these
One
things,
woman
right? And
show.
then, yeah. And then, and just shattering the cage on my own and going out to see, yeah, one woman show. Exactly. And so when that happened, things shifted, a whole new world opened up, and I started OMG Brand Story, a brand consulting agency built specifically for entrepreneurs. And we focus on helping entrepreneurs find out who they are. We help them unleash their purpose-driven brands, and I dare them to believe in the power of their story. And so that's where we are now, and we're doing great. I love all of the people that we get to partner with, all of the entrepreneurs that we get to partner with, and help them unleash their purpose-driven brands.
That's absolutely amazing. It's like you saw that you mentioned like feeling like stuck in a cage, and like in terms of like being able to really do all the things that you felt would drive you, and like
Mm.
being able to help other people's develop their story so that their brands can really take off. Because I feel like the most brands that I've ever resonated with were those that their story can connect with my story,
Absolutely.
that their mission connects with mine, and those are usually the brands that people end up investing in the
Mm.
most, right? I
Yeah.
feel that.
It's that
So
relatability.
absolutely. So the fact that you do that in your consulting agency, I just think that's absolutely amazing, because there is sometimes it's kind of, I feel like for a lot of entrepreneurs, it's hard to be able to articulate their story
Mm.
in their brand. And sometimes it's like
Yeah.
so hard, like, okay, my brand versus like me. Right. And so so I'm curious, I do want to dive into the Enneagram, but I'm curious, how do you help your clients when it comes to maybe developing a brand outside of themselves? Like, it's still, I don't want to say outside of themselves. It still represents their values, but it's not so much of a personal brand versus a
Absolutely.
nameless brand.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a great question, and that's a huge part of what we do. And so, like I was saying, earlier about the access that these huge global organizations, it's the same thing. And I'll get to what I'm getting at here is that they use these brand guidelines, but the founder, the heart of the brand, and why you have these core values and what you do comes from you. And entrepreneurs don't have that access directly to this, like, okay, well, we're going to work on your brand guidelines and workshop and drill down your purpose, your mission, your vision, your core values, get your ideal client personality. I mean, they're all over the place. There are people who might do a onesie twosie here and there, what have you. But ultimately, when you're building a brand, to your point, if it's not a personal brand and it's not solely focused on, just you, but it's maybe the service that you offer or the products that you offer, things of that nature, the bottom line is you are the dreamer, you are the visionary, you are the person from which all things grow. That heart of the brand is really your heart, right? And so, what do you believe in? What do you stand for? What are these things that are non-negotiables in your business? Because it doesn't necessarily have to be about something personal that's not transferable into like a brand. A lot of it is, how do you uphold your business? What are the core values that you believe in your day to day as an entrepreneur that you would instill into your business? Those are part of your core values. So we look and we identify and we drill these things down. We ask, why does your brand exist to begin with? What were you doing in that moment that made you shift and say, I've got to do this first. I have got to, whether it's problem solve, shatter the cage, let people have access to the things that they don't have access to, release them from whatever it is, all of those things, they're aligned with your purpose. Then your mission is kind of what exactly, do you do? Well, it's not you personally, it's what do you do in the service overall to help serve your ideal client when they come in? What are the things that you do that help transform them, that help? So there's a correlation between who you are and what your brand is, but it's a correlation, but it's also, it transfers, right? So your core values and beliefs, for instance, relentless resiliency is a huge core value of mine. I don't give up. We never give up. Enough said. Like, that's it. We just don't. There's always a solution. We will find a solution. And that's me personally. But it's also when I work with my clients, we're going to figure it out. We will figure it out, And so when you are building a brand, whether it's a personal, brand like you were talking about, or it is a service, a product, or something that's a little bit separate from a named brand, if you will, they're very closely related because your heart is in the heart of your brand. And so to be able to know who you are, what you do, why you do what you do, how do you deliver that across? That's like, what do you expect from whether it's your team members or with a shared values in alignment with your clients? You don't want to bring on clients who don't believe in the same things you do. And your clients certainly, like you just said it a second ago, you resonate, right? With certain things. That's a relatability factor. Guess what? Those are shared values. So there's a really close correlation, and which is why, honestly, a big reason of why I do what I do. There's a disconnect in the entrepreneurial world with the fact that they need brand guidelines. They need them. And we spin our wheels in the entrepreneurial world trying to figure out, how do I put my brand story together? What does it belong? How do we tell our story? How do we, should I tell my life story? Does it have anything to do with my product? Does that, those are all things that we do at OMG Brand Story. We have a brand story workshop where we give the framework for how exactly do you tell a brand story in a concise and effective manner that basically relates what you stand for. Because if you don't know what you stand for, your brand doesn't know what it stands for. How in the world can you expect anybody else to stand behind it, right? So you got to know that. And then give people the framework on why should they trust you? Give people the framework on what part of your journey makes you an expert in this arena, in this area, right? And then what happened that made you choose to become an entrepreneur? How can you help people and where do they find you? All of those things, they're all relatability factors. They're all things that people are looking for. We're in the people business. It doesn't matter, what we do. We can sell soap. We're in the people business. We can sell forks. We're in the people business. It's all, we're in the people business. And so that relatability, I would say there is a correlation between who you are and what you believe in and what you stand for and how you build out your purpose, your mission, your vision, your core values, because that pours into the bigger picture. You can modify it. You can tweak it. It doesn't have to be a personal statement, but it does come from who you are because that's your dream. That's your power. That's your superpower. It's what you believe in. That's daring to believe in your story. What do you believe in? And what are you going to put out there into the world? So yeah, there's definitely a correlation to that. So that's how we figure that out is we kind of take people through that, identify who they truly are and what are their non-negotiables, and then help infuse that and craft that into their brand guidelines, purpose, mission, vision, core values, ideal personality, and key brand messaging to develop their brand so that it is an authentic reflection of who they truly are.
I absolutely love that because I think doing that, your personal development journey and finding who you are is so important because like you said, that is your heart is what is driving your brand.
Yeah.
So I would love to, because before we started talking about, like building your brand and all of that, you mentioned that when you found out about your Enneagram number, that you were able to use that and learn from that. So what are some of the strengths from your Enneagram? Because you're an Enneagram 8, how are those used in your business? You mentioned one, which is resiliency.
Yes, absolutely. Well, and I'm going to take one step further with that to prep and say it was when I started to realize in order for me to be my most effective, I needed to identify what made me tick. I had to look inward and have some microsurgery on myself to have a clear understanding of why do I think the way that I think? Why do I engage in the way that I engage? How can I help myself elevate my state of awareness so that I can become better at whether it's engagement, communication skills, observation skills, development skills, any of those things, empathy, all of those things came into play early on. I probably started doing this maybe 15 years ago, probably, when I really started digging into who really am I? And part of that is the Enneagram. Part of that is the Enneagram. Part of that is, personalities, INTPA is what I am when it comes to like Myers-Briggs and things of that nature. But going on that journey and identifying who you truly are internally will help you not only develop a self-awareness and elevate that self-awareness, but that in turn really impacts in a positive manner your relationships to whether it's personal relationships, business relationships. You are better able to navigate the arena that you're in because you understand, you can anticipate things that are coming at you and understand that your default, my Enneagram 8 is a default. It's not that's not everything that I am, but they are default behaviors that are innate, those characteristics and attributes that are innate in my shell of who I am, if it, as it were, but I have control over that. I have control over that. And that is important. Speaking of control over that, that's a big thing with Enneagramming. And that's a huge thing. We're challengers, we're leaders, we're very instinctive. So I go from my gut a lot. While we have the logic and we have those things behind, my brand personality is maverick. creator and alchemist. When I go and I look at those things, I am a straight shooter. I'm very direct, and that's part of the Enneagram 8 personality, which is great because you can be assertive, but at the same time, you can be intense. And sometimes that can come across as intimidating. And sometimes that can come across as aggressive in a non-positive manner. And so that's why I think it's so, so important and critical for all of us to learn about who we are, how we tick, and understand why we do the things that we do or why we behave in that way. And understand that there is a way to really amplify and improve and advance yourself by learning more about who you are. And so, like I said, the being instinctive, being assertive, that's always kind of been like a thing. But this warrior spirit, that comes with Enneagram 8s, they are born fighters. It's so funny. Earlier, I got a lipstick in the mail that I had ordered, and it's called Luchadora. And it's fighter. And I'm like, ooh, I like this. I like this. This is good. Because it is. There's a lot of passion behind Enneagram 8s. But I also think that what has to be careful when we think about it, how it impacts us, is there's control, right? A lot of control issues, a lot of that passion falls into needing to control a lot of things. And so it's very, very important that you're aware of that. So you can see, hey, am I stifling something? Am I not letting something grow and develop to its fruition because I'm stopping in early? Some of the biggest lessons that I learned about my personality, and especially on the Enneagram 8 side, is that it's very helpful for me to pause in my response to others or in my response, because it helps me really analyze the situation and understand that sometimes people don't like the brutal, honest truth. Sometimes you have to read the room, sister, and understand, and understand and learn that there's a level of, whether it's empathy or sympathy or understanding where people are and how well they will receive or not receive. And your ability to master who you are and have a complete understanding and that elevated level of awareness can help you basically avoid the default switches and get the best of the best out of who you are and embrace those qualities, and then learn how to best navigate the qualities that may or may not serve you well. You have to figure that out. But until you actually do the hard work and look inward and decide, I don't necessarily like that part of the Enneagram 8. What am I going to do about it? Instead of, well, that's how I am, and you can't handle the truth. That's the end of that. It's just, what I mean? Like you have to understand the world is so much bigger than who you are. And if your true desire, especially as an entrepreneur, is to serve your people well, you have to be able to read the room. You have to have an elevated level of self-awareness, and you have to be able to understand who you are so that you can use those best qualities in order to connect with others, engage with others, and serve others well.
I love what you said. You have to have an elevated level of self-awareness, because like I hear you, and you seem very self-aware of, what your Enneagram 8, their biggest fear is, right? The fear of being harmed or controlled by others. Their basic desires is to kind of take ownership of their lives, take control of their own lives. But you did say in doing that, you may find yourself, not letting yourself grow because of the fear of it could be out of control, right? At some point, growth is scary.
Protect yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a big thing too, protecting. And you don't grow. That's the thing. Growth is stepping out of your comfort zone. And that's a big thing for Enneagram 8s. That's a big thing, to step out of your comfort zone and to be vulnerable. Put down the sword and the shield.
I was going to say that. Was it hard to become vulnerable with people through your journey?
Oh, yes. Yes. And it took me a long time. And that's the thing, it took me a really long time to get to that point. And I'm so glad that I did. The more I learned about who I am and the more I realized I am protecting my superpower. But I am basically, if you have, they say, that closed fist approach, you cannot have a closed fist approach to anything. Think about the fact that when you have an open hand, an open palm, right? Open palm approach to things, you are able to not only offer your blessings, right? Offer your gifts, but receive your blessings. When you have a closed fist, fully armored, shield up, don't touch me, I'm gonna hurt you first before you hurt me kind of attitude, you're basically stopping your blessings. You're stopping your blessings.
Oh my gosh, you were just saying that. That reminds me. I don't know if you've ever seen the clip. Have you seen Medea? Like Medea goes to
Yes.
jail, where
Yes.
Medea and Dr. Phil, and Dr. Phil's like trying to tell her about. I feel like she's an Enneagram 8 because she was like, "Well, I'm gonna get them before they get me. Before they."
That's right. Total Enneagram 8. Total. And that's true. It's a kill or be killed kind of situation. It really is the default, I will say, the default mentality, because there's a lot to be said about growth and a full and complete understanding. Not all Enneagram 8s do like the default behaviors or what have you. Not all Enneagram 8s have all of these, huge, obstacles or what have you. But there are some innate qualities, and that's being one of them, is that I don't want to be hurt. So I'd rather be the aggressor and take charge and protect myself. And sometimes it's protect you. And that therein lies the separation. And that is what I struggled with the most, is that I'm a complete loner. I'm an introvert. I don't sound like it, but I am an introvert. But just by nature, I would much rather, if I could be alone in the world for the rest of my life, just basically wreaking havoc on all the wrongs in the world and bring justice down, I would love that.
Well, I think that's the biggest misconception for introverts and extroverts. They believe like that, like extroverts are like these loud, super
Right.
gregarious people, but like introverts can be that too. It just means how do we restore our energy, right?
Exactly.
And so I'm an introvert too, but if I'm like in a social event, like I'm gonna be like a social butterfly. So people are like, oh, you're an extrovert. And I'm like, oh no, like people drain me.
I'm gonna need a nap afterwards. Totally. If I ever go to conferences, which, God willing, we'll get back to going to big conferences after we get through this year, right? When I'm in stuff like that. And at the end of the day, after like 10 hours of being on and like these energy, I've got big energy and I absorb energy when I am like in the room and I'm on, like engaged. Everybody's like, you want to go out for dinner and you want to, I'm like, no, I'm going to take a nap. I will see you people in 12 hours. I need to be by myself alone in the hotel room. It is a big, big deal. And so when I realized that, right. And when I realized, oh my gosh, I'm the one who's keeping myself, separated on the part of the vulnerability piece, I had to do the work and realize I can't do all of this on my own. I cannot have the warrior mentality 24/7 nonstop and be a lone wolf all the time, as much as I would love that to happen. Man, you need the three things that I've really identified on this journey about what you need in being an entrepreneur is you need a plan. Obviously, you need to understand you need to have the courage to step out of fear and step into your greatness, and you need a community. And that was not easy for me. It wasn't until I decided I was going to be basically receptive. Again, I decided to go from that closed fist mentality to the open fist mentality, that my entire world changed. I attended this, I had followed this person, this business person for a while, and she had this conference. And the day before I went to the conference, I started my Instagram for my business. And I said, I'm committing to being receptive. I will go into the room, I will be receptive, and I will be authentically me. And let's see what happens. Holy macaroni. My whole world like got flipped on its ear completely. I just had tons of connections. I got super involved. I got a lot of people. It's really funny. Enneagram 8s are funny in a way, and are my personal personality, I will say. I would just say me. So funny in that we go through our journey and we're all alone. We want to be alone, but why isn't anybody helping us? Like why is this so hard? We're not doing, this thought of like, who's going to discover my greatness? Because I'm an amazing warrior, and why isn't anybody seeing whatever? Hello, sister, you need to be receptive to having people pour into you as much as you pour into them. And so when that happened, that was my biggest hurdle. There's that vulnerability and the receptivity and being able to like show up. And it's still like a hurdle for me. I still have moments where I'm like, ooh, I got to go live on Instagram, or, I have to
do it. Oh. You were talking about like your journey with vulnerability and like going to this conference for the first time and just like really stepping into, remember you started your Instagram account and you just were acceptance. You went from closed fists, you said, to open hands. So talk to me a little bit about that. Was that like your first time that you really just decided, I'm going to step into something that's very uncomfortable for me, but I feel like this is going to be that part of my journey of growth?
I think for me, it wasn't necessary. So yes and no, right? So it was probably the first time I had ever stepped out of my comfort zone to welcome, to receive others into my circle, to receive, because I'm a cliff jumper, girl. I'm a total cliff jumper. I will go and do and take action, have been all my life. Just like, let's do it. Let's go. Need to be on stage. When we get on the microphone, do we need to do this? What do we need to do? I'm usually pretty fun. I get nervous, leading up to it, that nervous energy or what have you. I think that everybody else does, but this was the first time that I was doing something where I was allowing others into my world. It wasn't me taking over something and controlling something, stepping out of my personal comfort zone to do something that I had control over. It was, I am going to open the doors and hope that somebody, see if they're going to see me for my real me and hope that it's going to be okay, that kind of thing. And know that there were others out there who were missing that connection of community that I think is so, so critical. And because I was like, I was envious to see all these people like, woohoo, making connections and networking and blah, 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 blah. I'm like, no, like, I don't want you in my inner circle. Thank you so much. I have 5 in my whole life and I'm perfectly fine. That's fine by me. So this was the first time that I allowed others into my world. That was scary. Because then that puts you not only are you in a position of vulnerability, but people can judge you. That is like the worst possible thing, for an Enneagram 8 is like allowing you, I take off my armor and now you want to poke me? Oh, like that kind of thing, that kind of frustration. So it was hard. It was very difficult for me to do that. But I knew, and I want to say this too. So I went into that situation with a little hesitation, but the knowledge of I'm going to be receptive. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be. And in the middle of the conference, the speaker said, she was talking about having a conversation with her friends about what their version of hell is. And so she was talking and she said that she, shared her thing and that a friend of hers spoke up and said that her version of hell was coming face to face with the person that she could have been had she just stepped out of fear. Yes. And that, my friend, was exactly how I felt when I heard it. And it was in that moment that the weight of you could be so much more. You could do so much. You are purposed with so much more. Why are you approaching life with this close-fisted, mentality instead of allowing your gifts to flourish and receiving the blessings and the interaction and the camaraderie and the friendship and the networking and the support that is planned for you? I said a little prayer in my head. I kid you not. This is a total true story. And it's the most powerful thing that has happened to me that's completely shifted my entire perspective and everything that happened. In that moment, I said in my head, so she said that, and now and break, of course, right? Perfect timing. She knew everybody was going to be like, oh, thinking about this. They had this little break. And people were kind of walking around, moving around, and I was sitting in my chair, stunned. And I said a little prayer and I said, God, I feel like I just need somebody to pray over me right now. Cause I feel like I need to do something about this. This is so, so scary for me, but I know I need to do it. Within seconds, I could hear like shuffling beside me. And this person leaned over and said, hi, I don't mean to disturb you. I don't know why. I kind of feel like I need to pray for you. And my mind was blown. I was like, did I say the prayer out loud? Did I not? She was like, I don't even know, but I feel like I need to pray over you. I have a picture of it. I saved it. It's a huge part of, she is my business bestie now. We have spoken with each other at least once a week since March the 24th, 2019. And she has become my business bestie. And for both of us, it was purpose. It was like divine. It felt like it was like divine intervention of like, this person is in the same place somewhat, but she's maybe a little bit ahead of being receptive to, and open to moving forward. And that changed my life. It really did change my perspective on things and help me realize I don't have to be, the second I let go, the second that I said, okay, I need someone to come into my life, whether it's to pray for me, to be a support group in my life, to become my business best, whatever those things, were. And in that moment, and it's not necessarily going to happen like that way for everybody. It was a very special circumstance for me and a very powerful shift in my life. Shout out to Ruth Joy. Woohoo. She's amazing. That happened. And so it was a turning point that I realized the more receptive, the more vulnerable I am, the more powerful I become. And I
Oof,
think that
love
that's yeah,
that.
yeah. I think that's a huge. I think the shift in thinking was huge for me in that moment. So I got to
Yeah.
thank, we'll say Nicole Walters was the conference that I was at when that happened, and her telling that story on stage, and then me doing it was just it was a great moment.
That just it's so amazing, and I'm so glad that you take on vulnerability and you said this is going to help me step into my power. And like you knew you were already great and you had all these amazing skills to offer, but how you would just step into more power if you allowed other people to hold the weight with you. And
Absolutely.
so many entrepreneurs, they have that struggle. I mean, not just Enneagram 8s, but just like
Yeah.
entrepreneurs where we feel like we have to do it all together. So you mentioned a lot of different things when it comes to support. What current support right now kind of anchors you through this journey that has helped you feel when you know those entrepreneurship is just a very sometimes messy road, like it's never linear. So on those tough times where motivation may not always be, our willpower is not there,
Yes.
where do you lean on when it comes to support
I
now?
really do. I have now, over the last, couple of years, really understood the fact that we're better together, and just in general, and as in the world, right? And so to gather myself with the community, like our connections, you and I have connections with communities that we are involved in. I have other entrepreneurial communities. I have my business bestie crew. And even though I don't necessarily, I haven't changed me. I haven't changed who I am. I still need my alone time. I still have my warrior phase or what have you. But I know that I also, if when I welcome community into my space, whether it is to do a working session where we literally get on Zoom and just co-work, or it is a quick check community, whether it is in being involved on like a group community of entrepreneurs that's online that you can like post questions and get feedback and do some market research and engage with people who are going through the same journey that you're going through. I think that that is so, so critical. And that's probably been A, the most difficult, and B, the best thing that I ever did was to open myself up to this community. And like I said, there are three things. You have to have a plan, you have to have the courage to step out of fear and into your greatness, and you have to have a community. You cannot do it on your own. And this is me, warrior or princess OMG. You cannot do it on your own as much as you think that you can, and you're fully capable and you've got that magic. There are things that you need outside influence, perspective. It helps broaden your perspective to be inclusive of everyone else around you, and to invite, different perspectives and different opinions that just make you better. You don't have to take everything you don't have to take everyone's advice. You just have to be your own. You know who you are. Be your own filter, but be receptive to hearing from everyone else, because it does make you better. If at the very least raises your self-awareness so that you understand other people's perspectives and opinions. And that alone can help amplify who you are as an individual, just by being welcome to that.
You're just so many amazing golden nuggets, Olivia. You are just so amazing. Like OMG. I love that. I love that those are your initials. That's like gold.
I can thank my husband for the G.
I know I like to tell my husband he helped me with my SEO because like nobody has like there's not a lot of people with my last name. So
Yeah.
I'm like, thank you, babe, for the SEO.
It's the little things.
Oh
SEO and
yeah.
brand names. I love it.
Absolutely. Olivia, you have just been such a treat and such a joy to have. I know that so many people who listen to this podcast are going to resonate with you. And I know that this is going to hit right at home because a big part of what you do is storytelling. And you told us a story today of your personal development journey and your growth as an Enneagram 8. So I know this is going to be called to someone. I would love for you to share. This is a question that I ask all of my guests, and that is, what is one thing you wish people would just talk about more?
I think I really like people to understand that while, yes, I have talked about how community is so important and how it's a big part, and I think there are a lot of people that talk about that, we rarely talk about how hard it is for some of us to do that, how hard it is for some of us to join a community and not feel like they're either going to not fit in, they are going to be judged, they are not going to meet expectations, or they won't be the right, maybe they're not going to be served well, or they might need, I mean, there's all sorts of things that go on. We can talk all the time. And me too, I was talking about, community. There are people that it's really tough for them to do. I was one of them. And I still, have these moments where I pause. I'm so glad I found my tribe, though. I'm so glad I found the community that I fit in with. I just think it would be important for people to talk about the fact that while community is so important, it seems easy, like, oh, just come on, join the community and just participate and engage. Blah, blah, blah. Man, it's hard. Some people, it's really, really hard to be vulnerable, and it's really, really hard to engage and let people. We're lurkers. There are lurkers out there who need the community, but they need to know that the space is safe, that the space is welcoming. And so just because you flip the switch and start a community, I think it's very, very important that you nurture that community and create an environment where people do feel welcome, do feel safe, do feel that they can engage and ask questions, because it's kind of like the difference between dumping everyone in a barrel and creating a space where you can engage and feel as though you belong. And I think we don't talk a lot about that. We talk a lot about building communities, but we don't talk about how to cultivate the right community so that people like me who have a difficult time engaging and entering that space know that they're welcome. And so I think it's important that we do talk about the fact that it's not for everybody. So let's understand that and understand that we need to create really great spaces for people.
Yes, absolutely. I had a conversation with our mutual friend, Madison Anaya.
I love Madison.
And, I love the Fearless Chase community. I love it.
Love him.
And something that I love about Madison is that she seeks out the best for her community. And she even asked me, she's like, how can I make this community a safe community where people feel like they can state their opinions, state their thing, the things that bother them, and I told her, I was like, well, sometimes it could feel overwhelming in a big community, even if it's like 50 people, like that's still a big community.
Especially
I know
you don't know everybody.
Yeah. So something that has been helpful for me, and when I've seen in other communities, is when the community leader will step out and say, hey, so-and-so lives in Dallas, like, you should connect with them. Or so-and-so does this like you do. I think you guys would probably really get along. And that just helps because you feel like it's like your little buddy. Like, I don't know if you ever remember in kindergarten where they're like, but like the buddy system. And then eventually you end up feeling like, okay, I have my buddy. Like it's easier for me to start, talking to other people, because if not, I could just retreat back to my buddy. And it's so helpful. So yeah.
You're absolutely correct. I think Madison does a really phenomenal job with cultivating that spirit of engagement and safety and being real. She does a really phenomenal. That's the other thing too. I mean, there are so many spaces that the communities, they formulate these groups and no one's real. It's like a marketing community where everyone's just pitching stuff but doing it in this really polished, unrelatable, like we need real people to connect with. We are in the people business. And so, yes, the Fearless Chase community is a phenomenal community that I love, and both of us do. And I think, like I said, I agree with you. She does a great job with cultivating that. And you're right. Being able to find that buddy, that, again, my business bestie, that saved my life. That really, really did. I think that there's so much that happened just because I had that, business bestie, that business buddy to go through things with. So yeah, I think that's great advice.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Olivia. Where can people find you? What do you have coming up? I know that you do every single thing that you do in your business is driven by purpose. So what can we look forward to, and how can people find you?
Absolutely. You can find me on Instagram at the Olivia M. Gonzalez. I don't go anywhere without that M. You can also find me at omgbrandstory.com. We are always looking for entrepreneurs to help them out with creating their brand guidelines and talk about their purpose and mission, their vision, their core values, ideal client personality, building that key messaging. We have monthly brand story workshops, as well as our signature program. It's called the Bomb Experience, the Brand Optimizer Method, which is our signature method that walks you through how to build your brand guidelines in 5 days, back to back with us. And we are holding that as well. So just follow us on Instagram at the Olivia M. Gonzalez or at OMG Brand Story, or you can find us on our website at omgbrandstory.com.
Thank you so much, Olivia. You've been amazing. Thanks for listening to this episode of Cafe with Monica. If you enjoyed the episode, I want you to take a screenshot right now and share it on Instagram stories by tagging Cafe with Monica. This helps me spread the word so more and more people can hashtag just talk about it. Also, make sure to visit cafewithmonica.com to access the show notes and resources from this episode. I can't wait for you to listen to the next episode, so see you guys next time.